as a cultural advocate and as an artist and as someone who works a lot with organizations, what are the sort of patterns that connect for me, and what is really interesting to me? And I think what I came up with was there's this wonderful woman named Anna Belle Crocker, and a lot of people don't know about Anna Belle Crocker, but Anna Belle was the first curator and director of the museum from 1909 to 1936. The museum was founded in 1892, the Portland Art Association, and I think it's really interesting to go back to that period. And if you look at, 1891, 1892, the Armory was built in 1891, museum was founded in 1892. You look at what was going on during that period, and what became really fascinating to me was that while we were building our physical infrastructure as a city, we were building our cultural infrastructure. I think it is very, very beneficial for us as citizens and as cultural advocates to go back and look at a period where, in fact, I think we did a lot of things very, very right. And in many ways, what that does is all roads lead to the Progressive Era. And if you look at Progressive Era Portland, you get some really, really interesting pictures of kind of how we got to be where we are. 1892, that period I'm talking about, 7 community leaders got together and decided that, among other things, while we've got this wonderful library idea that is brewing, the notion of a public library that was fully accessible to everyone is a very, very new idea. And along with that becomes this idea of, well, what if we get together and we create this Portland Art Association, which will, in essence, give us the foundation of a museum? And they did this because they wanted it to be accessible to all the citizens of Portland. Really, groundbreaking notion. So Anna Belle Crocker comes back to Portland. She is given the job of curator and director and principal of what became the museum school. What she was about was setting the foundational ethos of what a museum can be like in a city of the size of Portland. I got very interested in this period of history because, as a cultural advocate, when you look around and you think, how are things working, how are things not working, when did they work and when did they work their best, you kind of go back and you begin to look a little bit at history. So you look at someone like Anna Belle, and she is, this picture is so fascinating to me too. I'm going to get to that later. But she was a professional woman. You did not have a lot of professional women in Portland at that time. She developed connections between the museums and the schools. This was one of the first museums in the country to really invite schools in. I mean, not just elementary schools, but colleges in to use the facility, to lean on the staff, to have this really be a resource for the community. As an institution, we want to continue to think about this as a good, strong community resource, but can it be that, more than just busing in thousands of kids each year and they tromp through and they've had their art experience and we check the box and they leave? I mean, she was really, really interested in the sort of Mobius strip of audience building and education and betterment. And she said that the task of the small museum, which includes an art school, is to cherish the whole process as well as the garnered harvest, which I think is just sort of lovely. In 1913, right after the famed Armory show in New York, she brought Duchamp's New Descending a Staircase to Portland. And, very, very shocking piece in New York at the time. And then, they bring it all the way out here where, good Lord, they actually have museums out here. And it caused a stir. I mean, there were people who, canceled their dues-paying membership to the museum over it. But what she wrote about it was, the advent of these works seemed to come like a cross ray of daylight let into a shaded room. So far from seeming to break with the past, the effect was of connecting what had gone before the more securely to an active future, of shifting and revaluing the objects that form the visible history of art, throwing elements previous in shadow into light, so that the far past, its opening into the momentary present and into the approaching future, showed as from one root. So what we're hearing is, she has this extremely elevated sense of continuum in art history at a very, very early moment. And it's pretty exciting. I mean, she talks about how the less open-minded trustees of the museum were sort of furious by this. But she said these were merely prickles, prickles surrounding fruit ripe for our nourishment. She loved to take a metaphor and just like stretch it. She brought in an exhibition of Kandinsky's work, of Blue Rider works. So imagine Portland in that time responding to very, very modern work that is perplexing and exciting and disturbing, and she was hell-bent on providing context, and that was the beauty. She really wanted people to understand this through line, from Bernini and El Greco all the way up to Brancusi, and she was really, really good at doing that. And I feel like she had a sense for trying to hold the hand of the public in a very, very patient way. Here is this woman who, you look at her for all practical purposes, looks like a very prim, sort of teacherly woman, and she's thinking these incredible, very, very forward-thinking thoughts. And she goes even further to say that she thinks that schools of art conceivably could help to inspirit all teaching. So she's really thinking about education on a really, really broad scale. And she's thinking of it in pretty revolutionary ways. But she was, from the get-go, thinking about the educational function.